Joining us now on the John Fredericks Radio Network live in Manchester, New Hampshire, Richard Fisher. He's a senior fellow with the International Assessment and Strategy Center and a longtime contributor to the John Fredericks Show. Rick Fisher, great to have you with us. We're live in New Hampshire.
John, thanks for having me back.
Rick, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, Rick, anytime. I wanted to get you on, even though we're covering the rally today. The events in Hong Kong really shaking a lot of people. It's like freedom has come out of the genie bottle. Now the communists don't know how to put it back in there. From Beijing, we're going to have another Tiananmen Square. They've apparently moved either troops or some sort of security forces into a soccer stadium right by Hong Kong. Aerial views have about 80 military-style trucks there. We don't know what's in them. Rick, what is going on in Hong Kong?
Right now, we're seeing an intimidation campaign that could precede an actual invasion, if you will, even though Hong Kong is Chinese territory, because it was previously a colonial enclave controlled by Great Britain. It has developed a democratic culture, if you will, not a complete democratic culture, but one that honors freedom of expression, until recently a free press. But China has always had a two-faced view toward Hong Kong. The Chinese Communist Party, since 1949, its founding, has used Hong Kong as a source of investment and commerce and brain power. But it has also viewed Hong Kong as a cancerous appendage that needed to be surrounded. And indeed, since 1949, Hong Kong has been surrounded by units of the People's Liberation Army and, more recently, the just as large People's Armed Police.
So, are we going to have another Tiananmen Square, or are the communists going to find that too big of a risk now with social media and so many people seeing what's going on TV that they really didn't have with Tiananmen Square in 1989, Rick?
I think they're going to deploy into the city, and if the people of Hong Kong respond with million-person crowds, like they did, I believe, on June 19th, there will be bloodshed. This is how the Communist Party leadership operates. They don't tolerate this kind of opposition, and a bloody confrontation will be followed by years and years of cleansing, if you will, brainwashing, trying to take control of the next generation, and perhaps additional contracts for the so-called re-education camp complex out in Xinjiang. Wow.
If that were to happen, because what you're just outlining is, that's scary stuff, right? Bloodshed and then re-education camps. If that actually happens, if there's actually that sort of a bloody confrontation, where if you got 1 million people, Rick, right? It's like Tiananmen Square. Thousands and thousands of people have to be murdered. Thousands. It isn't just 100. And some people say that Tiananmen Square, the deaths were over 10,000, never reported by the media. Like, no one knows how many people they annihilated there. So if that happens, what does the U.S. do? Stand around like we did in 89 and just look the other way?
Well, we weren't able to stop the last Tiananmen, and we won't be able to stop the next one, or probably the ones that follow. For the United States, the job number one is to advocate for the safety and even freedom of the people of Hong Kong, make clear that that is what the world desires. And then if China does what it looks like it's going to do and causes and is responsible for mass bloodshed, then we need to contain the Communist Party of China. We must win the next Cold War before it consumes our children, because the Chinese aren't going to stop here. The concentration camp complex in Xinjiang is going to have many clients. After Hong Kong, there'll be Taiwan. After Taiwan, Mongolia. After Mongolia, there are disputed territories in a lot of India. And then there's the Russian Far East. The Chinese have an agenda of conquest that could be consuming so many lives well into this century. And we have the opportunity to head this off by constricting and forcing the Chinese Communist Party to evolve out of its brutal dictatorship.
Rick, that's a pretty dire prediction. How could we do anything to inspire, instigate, or otherwise encourage regime change in that dictatorship? I mean, there's nothing that we could do that would change their system of government.
Well, John, I would beg to differ. Every day, the United States maintains alliances with Japan, South Korea, and maintains loose defense commitments to Taiwan. As long as these Asian countries remain free, especially Taiwan, a Chinese society, if you will. They don't view themselves as Chinese, they're Taiwanese. But every day that Taiwan exists, it undermines the legitimacy of the Chinese Communist Party. It proves to the people of China that they can have both freedom, political freedom, and economic freedom. They don't have both in China. And by ensuring that Taiwan lives and survives and thrives, we can help the people of China to see that they don't have to accept forever the Chinese Communist Party dictatorship.
So, when was it, Rick? You're you're better on these dates here than I am. You're the scholar. When was it in the 1980s that the Chi-Com government really threatened Taiwan, where Reagan made the famous statement that he would do whatever it takes, militarily or otherwise? He left no option off the table to defend the freedom of the Taiwanese people. I think that was somewhere in the 80s when Reagan did that, and then the Chinese backed off. Obviously, there was not much they could do when they challenged him. Do you see, along with Hong Kong, do you see another Chinese threat for Taiwan? Because obviously what you just said, I mean, that's the thing that's really keeping them in check. How do you see that playing out?
Well, yes. The pacification of Hong Kong, if you will be a small-scale practice for what they will be looking to do to Taiwan. They have the ability to invade the island now. They're just tying up loose ends, gathering their confidence, trying to force the Americans not to intervene. They haven't quite put it all together, but they could very early in the 2020s. And once they take Taiwan, what's happening in Xinjiang will be child's play compared to what they'll be doing in Taiwan. Back in the late 1950s, for a while, when we had an active mutual defense treaty with Taiwan, we stationed nuclear weapons on the island when we thought the Chinese when Mao Zedong was getting ready to invade. That deterred Mao. It also changed the mind of Nikita Khrushchev that his alliance then at the time with Mao was a very dangerous thing, did not serve Soviet national interests, security interests. He broke that alliance. The first Sino-Soviet alliance broke. Today, the Sino-Soviet alliance, Russian-China alliance, is back on track. It's a growing thing. They could be coordinating their mutual nuclear forces against us to coerce us not to help Taiwan. It's a dangerous time, and we're very fortunate to have a president who understands this, is trying to navigate carefully, but also has many plans to build up American strength. And the most important part are the missiles that he's developing, hypersonic missiles, medium, intermediate range missiles. If he succeeds in deploying these by the end of a second term, that will go very far to deterring war and keeping our children out of a generation of conflict with China.
If the Chi-Coms move in Hong Kong and it plays out, Rick Fisher, the way you're suggesting, that there is mass bloodshed and then the re-education camps and the cleansing starts, but the first thing you're going to have is the conflict and the bloodshed. What specifically do you advise the Trump administration to do that day, that week, not years later, months later, but that week? What do they do?
Well, that week, the president should not just get on the television and address the American people. He needs to go to the well of the Congress and address the Congress, and from there address the world, and just lay it out. This is not Hong Kong. Hong Kong is just the beginning. Every free people will suffer the same fate as Hong Kong if we don't unite now and we don't help the people of China find a different path.